Hi guys, welcome again to another short computer tutorial, and this time the topic is on subnetting. Okay, so particularly the subnetting that we're going to discuss is subnetting Class C addresses. Okay, so as an example that we have here, okay, the problem is that you are supposed to create three separate network or subnets, one for marketing, one for sales, and one for administration, given the network ID of 192.168.1.0. Okay, so from the subnet mask or shortcut notation is /24, which is, if you convert it to the subnet mask, full subnet mask is actually, okay, let me just type it. Sorry. So /24 is actually equals to 255.255.255.0 as a subnet mask. Okay, so if you're not yet aware of how we were able to get that, I'm gonna make I have actually another video for that, and I'm just gonna put on the description box the link to that video for you to be able to understand on how the /24 is actually equals to 255.255.255.0 subnet mask. Okay, we're gonna have a separate video for that. Okay, going back now, given this network ID, what is actually required is we are going to get for each network, for each of the three networks, we're going to provide the network ID, the new subnet mask, the host ID range. Okay, so what's the range from within the network? Okay, and then usable hosts that can be distributed to computers or laptops, okay, or any other IPs except for the network ID and the broadcast ID. And then lastly is the broadcast ID, okay, and or broadcast ID or broadcast IP address, or network ID or network IP address. Okay, so the first step that we're gonna do is, for us, this is actually gonna be a shortcut method using a table. This was from credits to Mr. Sunny. Okay, this is what he was the one who actually developed this style, okay, of solving for the subnets. Okay, so we're going to create a table first. Okay, so the table is going to be composed of subnet, and then hosts, number of hosts, and then the subnet mask. Okay, so let me just give a space here. Okay, so the subnets, we start with 1, 2, and then we just do this by multiplying it by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 2 is 32, 32 times 32 is 32 times 2 is 64, 64 times 2 is 128, 128 times 128 is 256. Okay, and that's it. Okay, for the hosts, okay, so that you won't forget, we're gonna still do the same way. We multiply it by 2, but we start with the right to left. Okay, 1, and then times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, 16 times 2 is 32, 32 times 2 is 64, 64 times 2 is 128, and 128 times 2 is 256. Okay, so for the subnet mask, we should start with /24. /24. Then, because we're in the class C, so /25. Let's just try to use autofill, because so that this will be faster. Okay, there it is. So let's just try to put it in the middle, and then let's do some of the borders. Okay, there. So this means that if we're looking for three networks, three separate networks, which is what we're asked for, three separate networks or three subnets. Okay, so which would that fall under? Is it gonna be two, one? It's, of course, it's not one. So two, not two also. Four, because there's no three. Okay, it's always times two times two. So it falls under four. It's not also eight because that's too much already. So three falls under four. So we're just gonna highlight this. So which actually means that under four subnets you have 64 hosts per subnet, and the subnet mask is going to be /26. Okay, so let's try to make this smaller, and then let's make another table. Now we're gonna make the table that contains all those things that are being required. Okay, so what are those? Network ID. I'm just gonna copy it. Network ID, subnet mask, host ID range, usable number of usable hosts, and broadcast ID. Okay. Oops. I'm gonna just transfer this here. Okay. So there it is. So now let's just put insert another column so that, okay, so we can number it. So we're asked for three separate networks, but we actually can provide four because of our table. Okay, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, let me just remove this. No borders, no border. So I'm gonna put them all in the middle so that it looks better. Okay, so network ID. So based on what is asked, which is three separate networks, and then what's given actually is this 192.168.1.0/ or subnet mask 24. Okay, so we always start with the what is given, the network ID. So what's given actually is 192.168.1.0. Okay, so the next step is we're just gonna fill this up under the network ID. We can do that by just using this data under hosts, which is 64. So we just add 64 to the last, which is 0. Okay, so 192.168.1.0. So 0 plus 64, which means 192.168.1.64. Okay, so next is again we add another 64 to the 64. So 192.168.1.128. Am I correct? Okay, 64.128. Okay, and then lastly is 64.128 plus 64 is 192. Am I correct? Let me just check. 128 plus 64 is actually 192. Correct. Okay, so 192.168.1.192. Okay, so network ID is filled up. Okay, we're good to go for the next step, which is we just fill this up, subnet mask, because we already have this data, which is /26. Okay, so we just fill this up with /26. slash 26. So we just copy and paste it. Oops, what have I done? Sorry. There. Okay. So subnet mask is done. Next is we get first the broadcast ID so that it's gonna be easier for us to get the usable host and the host ID range. So the broadcast ID is actually the last IP before the next subnet, which is for this one, the last one, which is before this .64, of course, is .63. Okay, so 192.168.1.63, or you could also do that by just, since we have 64, okay, you just add, but 64 you have to subtract it with 1 because the other one is already being utilized, so it has to be 63. 64, the number of hosts minus 1, and you add that so that it's gonna be your broadcast ID. Okay, so you'll understand that all the more as we go on. Okay, so this one is gonna be 1, so less than 128, so 192.168.1.127. Okay, 192.168.1.127, or you could also do the addition by 63. Okay, so 64 equals sign 64 plus 63. Why 63? Because minus 1 from our hosts. That's why it's 127. Okay, so next is, what is it gonna be? Of course, minus 1 of the 192. So 192.168.1.192 minus 1 is 191, or again plus 63 from 128. So 128 plus 63 is going to be 191. Now for this, of course, we don't have another for us to subtract minus 1, so we'll just use the plus 63, so which is 255. So 192.168.1.255. let's check it. 192. Okay, that's correct. 255. Okay, so we're good to go with we've already filled up network ID, subnet mask, and broadcast ID. Next is usable host. The usable hosts are actually the hosts minus the network ID and the broadcast ID. So it's always going to be the number of hosts minus 2, because you're going to remove the, for counting, you remove the network ID and the broadcast ID. So that means it's going to be 64 minus 2. So all will be 64 minus 2 is going to be 62. So 62, 62, 62, and 62. For the host range now is, it's going to be the actual IP address range of the 62 units or hosts. So it's going to be, of course, plus 1 of the network ID up to minus 1 of the broadcast ID. So it's going to be 192.168.1 plus 1 is 1. Okay, up to 192.168.1.63 minus 1, which is 62. Okay, I hope that you understood this. Okay, so plus 1 from the network ID, which that's why it's that 1, and minus 1 from the broadcast ID, which is 63 minus 1, that's why this is 62. Okay, so I'll just copy and paste this so that there. I'll just do the renaming. So this means, so plus 64 plus 1 is going, this is going to be 65. 65. And then 127 minus 1 is going to be 126. Okay, next one is 128 plus 1 is 129. Up to 191 minus 1 is 190. And finally, just adjust this so that everything will be clearer. So this is going to be 193. 193. And then 255 minus 1 is going to be 254. 254. Okay. So that's it. So our table is now complete and we've got it all correct. Okay. So as you can see here, we have actually, what is actually asked is just 3, right? What actually is 3 separate networks, but since it falls under 4, we have given the 4 so that the client can actually just choose 3 among the 4. Okay, so this is for for the first network. This is the network ID, subnet mask, host range, usable host ID, and broadcast ID, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the correct answer for this problem, and we'd like to acknowledge and credits to Mr. Sunny for coming up with this very very easy to understand technique, okay, using the Sunny table.